Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nikki Freeman, and I'm the Director of Education at the Holocaust Memorial, Miami Beach. On behalf of the memorial, I am pleased to welcome you to this program for Holocaust Education Week. I would like to give a special welcome right now to all students and teachers who are watching this program live in their classrooms. Holocaust Education Week is a series of presentations, film screenings, and discussions, as well as educational lectures that are taking place this week. Holocaust Education Week is sponsored by the Florida Department of Education, the State of Florida Department of State, Division of Arts and Culture, and the City of Miami Beach Cultural Affairs Program Cultural Arts Council. I would also like to extend a special thank you to the Greater Miami Jewish Federation for their ongoing support. Today, we will be viewing the film My Survivor, followed by a conversation with the film's senior executive producer, who's here with us today, Dr. Mindy Hersh. A little bit about My Survivor. My Survivor asks, and I think answers the question, who will tell the story when the last survivor is gone? As we approach the end of the generation of Holocaust survivors, the world is confronted by this haunting question. My Survivor takes a unique look at this by exploring the life-changing experiences of some of the 500 University of Miami students who learned about the Holocaust through the intimate relationships they forged with members of this remarkable but rapidly disappearing population. The film takes the viewer on a journey, revealing the powerful bonds that developed between this diverse group of students and the survivors that they came to love and respect. Woven together with in-depth interviews, dramatic news footage, and unforgettable filming locations, My Survivor reveals how college students came to be a strong voice against Holocaust denial and hate, embracing the survivors' pleas that the memory and the lessons of the Holocaust live on when the last survivor is gone. So we're going to start watching the film right now. It's about an hour long, and then after the film, we are going to have a discussion with, as I said, Dr. Mindy Hersh, and then we'll open it up to some questions from the audience. Thank you.
Someone said to me the other day when I told them I was doing this, you're the last generation that's going to hear these stories firsthand. You know, and that really hit me.
My sister's son.
Yeah. There won't be any more living evidence that this happened, and that's a little scary and definitely sad.
I wonder now what's going to happen next. What's going to happen after the survivors, are gone.
Unfortunately, one day we're never going to have first-hand survivors. All we will have are second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand accounts.
How are you?
So today I want to thank you, Mrs. Bader, that within a one-year period you touched my life forever.
I was in Auschwitz. I never forget it. I dream with it and I sleep with it all my life.
It was among the most remarkable experiences that a university student could have, that they could have access to and establish such an intimate relationship with a Holocaust survivor over such an extended period of time.
We were through hell, you know. Sometimes when I talk about this, it's like I'm not talking about myself. Once we overcame all that, we managed to have a life.
There will be an end to hearing those stories from their lips, but just because the people who tell the stories firsthand will not live forever, that doesn't mean that the stories can't.
This program was made possible by Elizabeth G. Frank and family. In memory of Stephen Frank, beloved father, husband, and brother. Additional major funding was generously provided by the Gelvin Family Philanthropic Fund. Kent Services. the Five Millers Family Foundation, the Bremen Family Foundation, Marita and George Feldenkrais, Leslie Miller Science. This film has been supported by a grant from the Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany. A full list of funders can be found at aptonline.org. It started with a handful of University of Miami students thinking about a world without Holocaust survivors. For an entire academic year, students and survivors, young and old, were paired together as part of a landmark educational program. 11 years later, nearly 500 young people became outspoken voices against Holocaust denial and hate. All became witnesses to history.
Bye, bye, bye.
Hi.
Mama Shina.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
She helped me a lot. I helped her and she helped me. She's a wonderful girl. Very, very good heart.
The human experience of it is not something that you get from a history book. You see the statistics. You see, 6 million people dead.
This is my family here. And I am here.
Wow. It doesn't really hit you until there's someone in front of you telling you exactly what they experienced, and this is what I went through, and this person in front of you that you just can't believe survived all that.
In the early days of the program, about 160,000 victims of the Holocaust, the Nazi genocide against the Jews, were living in the United States. By the time you see this, less than 67,000 will still be alive. As the last generation vanishes, humanity is confronted by a haunting question. Who will tell their stories when the last survivor is gone?
The Holocaust happened because the people realized nobody speaks up, nobody cares. Quietness created the Holocaust.
It's when you're talking to a survivor and you see it in their faces, what they've been through.
How can I forget my mother, who I saw taken to the gas chamber? My father, who was worked to death, they kept on beating him. How can I forget that?
He never gave up, even when he was at his weakest, starving, sick. They kept fighting for their lives. You see the emotion when they talk about their family and the last time they saw them, and that's when it becomes real.
Hopelessness, loss, man's capacity for evil. You don't want to see evidence and proof of those things and how they affect the lives of people you care about, but they are true.
I wonder now what's going to happen next. What's going to happen after the survivors, are gone.
Unfortunately, one day we're never going to have first-hand survivors. All we will have are second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand accounts.
When you went there, it was horrible. Like the children, how they were crying.
When we went to the Holocaust Memorial, she was overwhelmed with emotion. And I know that she was thinking about the things she didn't want to tell anyone.
You see, the future is no longer us. The future is the second generation and the third generation.
History does repeat itself. History repeats itself when people forget their history. And so the reason why I'm a teacher is in the hopes that it won't happen again. We can stand up to injustice.
There was definitely some nights that I remember driving home and I had to pull over because I was in tears. I was upset that this woman had to go through this. No one should ever have to go through something like that.
I was in Auschwitz. I never forget it. I dream with it and I sleep with it all my life. I cannot forget it, never, never. I remember I found out the same night that they burned down my parents. And you see, and we survived. Nobody should know what people can go through in life.
It actually started with a phone call to me from an old friend, the former Secretary of State, Larry Eagleburger. He said, I have some resources that are part of a settlement. Are you interested in a program that would involve students and Holocaust survivors? And that's where you started. Wow. I mean, I just thought it was an incredible opportunity. It seemed to us that Miami was a perfect place to connect Holocaust survivors in some way to students, connecting them with people, frankly, that are getting very old and were very close to the end of their lives, but who had a story to tell which none of us ever wanted to forget.
Here I have an album with everything.
The individual stories of the survivors had a tremendous impact on the students who met them. Somehow we transferred the experience from those who were there to those who can now carry it forward.
They took everything away from us.
The responsibility to keep the memory of the Holocaust alive is now shifted. So when there are no more Holocaust survivors left, we'll be at a crossroads.
The internship had a lot of moving parts to it. It was an academic program. It was a 2-semester commitment. They got full credit for it. We had over 500 students that went through this program, and they knew that they were going to be doing something pretty extraordinary.
How are you?
How are you, my
dear? Nice to see you.
After 7 years.
I know. Good.
This young lady was in University of Miami as an undergraduate. Since then, she went through law school, and now she's married. And it was very nice to have a reunion with her.
Should we go inside?
Yeah.
Come.
Go inside. Okay.
You look amazing.
I know, as always. As always. Mrs. Bader and I met weekly at her apartment. I think sometimes more than that, actually. She would always wait for me with a smile on her face, a tray on her coffee table with tea and cookies. And she would talk to me about her children, her grandchildren, and of course her experience in the Holocaust. We developed a true friendship, one that I never would have imagined would have been built between a 20-year-old at the time and someone the age of my grandparents. So today I want to thank you, Mrs. Bader, that within a 1-year period you touched my life forever.
It improves their life and their value system by seeing that it's possible to have a life even after all these horrors. When the law came that we have in 24 hours vacate our house, we had to move into a ghetto with other families together. And we were in the ghetto for a couple of months, and then another order came to vacate the ghetto and march to a big open space in the outskirts of the city, Munkac. And it was already like end of May, very, very hot, and we had to walk pretty fast. And one of my grandfathers, who was still alive, he was sort of in his 80s, and he couldn't walk fast. He fell, and my mother tried to help him to get up. And the guards who were walking along us with their rifle and the German shepherds hit my mother with the rifle butt and forced her to leave her father on the ground. And that's the last time I saw my grandfather. It's not easy. It wasn't easy for me. But in order to go on, one has to make changes, and one has to sort of have some aims and help others. And I think that helps. Not everybody could get over, definitely. I knew people who had lots of trouble to adjusting to life after.
Most of them had never met a Holocaust survivor. Roughly half of the students were Jewish, half were not. And so initially there was tremendous anxiety on their parts, because for them it was like in some ways meeting a superstar. And very quickly, anxious students transitioned to a level of comfort with their survivor. And then it went on to, in most cases, establishing really close relationships.
Now she's coming tonight to be with
really?
To be with me in the hospital.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm a pre-med student, so my day was always math and science, and this was something that was really important to me because my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. When I found out he passed away, it was so much more than just losing a family member. It was losing a story, it was losing a history, it was losing all of these experiences firsthand, because there are people who deny the Holocaust, and then if you meet my grandfather and he tells you the story, just like Fred as well, it's, oh wow, you were there.
As the war was coming to an end, they didn't know what to do with us. So they put up those death marches. So I was in a death march for 16 days. The biggest snowstorm. The only thing we had, those striped pajama outfits, and they were cold. People were dying by a minute. And not only that, we were being escorted by Hitler Youth, the young Nazis. Their sport was to kill Jews, and they were only waiting for somebody to be a straggler, to not be able to walk or to march, and they killed them right away. And they had fun, they were laughing. The guy's still alive, he shoots him again. We started off with about 100,000 people. We didn't arrive to Bergen-Belsen more than maybe 10, 15,000. The rest of them died. And Bergen-Belsen for itself was undescribable. It was hell on earth.
This is our library.
Yeah. So Fred coming into my life, it reminded me of my grandfather. There's something about him that I feel like I know him.
What is it, the book?
iPad?
Yeah, so I don't read the books.
You're so hip with the times.
Yeah.
I don't even have an iPad. For me, it was, now it's my job. As a younger generation, I've accepted that this is my role, my position to spread this knowledge to other people.
So I grew up in Plano, Texas. For me, I'm going to be a fourth-generation physician. My family's composed of physicians, engineers, pharmacists. My aunt actually does Chinese medicine, so like the whole gambit of science. Starting off in high school, the Holocaust is one of those things that we learned about. I got a book about like the medical experiments in the Holocaust. I read 10 pages and it was tough to fall asleep that night. So when I went to the University of Miami, this internship was brought up. I was very much on this medical route and Dr. Goldsmith was a psychologist, so it was a good pair. We had decided to meet at his house, and I remember I drove over and I was like, I think I was 15 or 20 minutes early, so I just sat in my car. I was like, I don't want to throw him off. I really don't know who this person is. I was like 20 years old at that point, and I was starting to think like, maybe I'm in over my head. I'm going to talk to someone who's like been in this. And like, I was so worried about like saying something offensive or not asking the right question or being boring. But I remember I knocked on the door and he's a smaller man, so at least that made me feel a little less intimidated. And he took me to his living room and he's like, "Do you mind if I smoke?" I was like, "No, by all means." So he got his pipe and he started packing his pipe and he's like, "All right, what do you want to talk about?"
This is what college is all about. To be able to learn from people who are different from you, learn from people who have experienced the world in a way that is irreplaceable. And so I knew that that was something that I really wanted to have the opportunity to do.
Hi, how are you? And Helen brought her dad, Joe Sachs, who is the survivor I just started to tell you about, who's going to be speaking to the class.
Here's his bio, and there's some handouts you might want to give the students.
I just know it's going to be incredibly meaningful for them to hear your father. As you guys may have noticed, we have a Holocaust survivor here with us today.
My father, Joe Sachs, will tell you a little bit about the camps that he was in. My mother survived Auschwitz.
Eric, stand down.
Okay, you're on.
I'm on.
People were starving, people were dying of cold and starvation. That was the last I saw my mom and my dad.
Joe Sachs coming to my classroom to speak with my students was definitely an outgrowth of that internship experience. It's a very different experience in the sense that with my survivor, I met with him once a week for an entire year. So that relationship is very intimate. My students were able to hear from Joe Sachs for an hour in their class period one time, but it hugely impacted them, and they continue to talk about it to this day because I still have those students.
Over the years, I was able to hold on to life until they liberated us. We were liberated physically, but the mental, the psychological problems stay with you for the rest of your life. When I came to a camp and I was put in front of the barrack couple, he held a little speech to us with a group of prisoners, and so he held a whip in one hand and a club in the other. He says, "This is going to be life over here." And he hit one of the prisoners with a club. He died on the spot. And he says, "Yes, that's going to be life from here on in." And that has a lot to do with the injury inside, which is something that will never go away.
Every single one of them said, "I'm going to remember that there was a Holocaust survivor who came to speak to me, and I'm going to always feel like I have a personal experience with the Holocaust in a way that I never did before." That was my job. If they don't remember a single thing I said, but they remember Joe Sachs coming to my classroom, that's enough.
My speeches end with one thing: if you want a better world for yourself and for your children, listen carefully what happened in this world not long ago.
It's incredibly evident. In speaking to a survivor and hearing their stories, in reading Night, in reading anything, you have this tremendous proof. This undeniable proof of it happening, and it was real. And you know, those stories need to be told, and they cannot be denied. They are truth.
from a historical point of view, this genocide was different from other genocides. Look, Stalin at the same time murdered millions, starved millions. We've seen in more contemporary times, genocide in Rwanda. We don't even know the exact number, but in the space of a month and a half, hundreds of thousands murdered. Cambodia. But there are things that are unique about the Holocaust that deserve our attention. This is the only time in human history that a country went out after a group of people, not just within their borders, and not just in places where they might have attacked them, but from one end of a continent to another and beyond. And it wasn't just, let's go after those people who might be dangerous. People were wheeled to the trains in wheelchairs, on gurneys. The scope of it, and the scope of the victim, makes this a different kind of genocide. And it happened in the 20th century, which is supposedly modernity and advancement. And the leaders of it were by and large well-educated people. The mobile killing units responsible for murdering between 1 million and 1.5 million Jews on the Eastern Front, Einsatzgruppen, they were led by people with PhDs. One had a PhD in law. One was a minister. It's sort of a commentary, because here we're talking about a program within an educational context. I've devoted my entire life to teaching. And we always think that if you educate someone, you can turn them into a decent human being. Not true.
It's a story of our leaders not standing up when they knew something terrible was happening. And it's a story of a remarkable group of people that wanted to make sure the world never forgot. And for me, because I'm not Jewish, I'm in fact Arab American, it is a searing experience every time I hear about it.
As a Hindu, I don't know, I guess I was taught early in Sunday school and by my parents and the swamis that I've learned that every person's good. And at some point when you look at the Holocaust, it's tough to think that the people who were calling the shots were inherently good. I think this transcends religion. I think it comes down to ignorance and ignorant hate. The idea of singling someone out just because you don't agree with what they believe in seems absurd, and then to take it to the extent of exterminating those you disagree with is another magnitude of just evil. It wasn't just Jews who were being ostracized and tortured and hurt. It was a variety of different people who were deemed different or lesser.
It was among the most remarkable experiences that a university student could have, that they could have access to and establish such an intimate relationship with a Holocaust survivor over such an extended period of time.
Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And she's in Boulder now, so how lucky, right?
Yeah. So I'm working for a magazine at the moment.
And what makes it all the more precious is the opportunity is ending. It's fading so rapidly.
I remember getting Peter's name in my folder and reading about his background, and I find out I got paired with a survivor who himself was an engineer for 60-something years.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a long time.
A child survivor. And rather than going into a camp, he was hidden.
Well, the paper is nothing.
It's just by the luck and good grace of other people that he just kept on surviving.
I mean, the thought that my grandparents perished in Birkenau, I think the last time I saw them was probably when I was 7. It's constantly in my mind while I was there. I was walking alone, and there was one of these paddles stuck in the grass, and the words were in Hungarian Jews, which indicated that this is where they were killed. I climbed over, I photographed it, and stood there for a while. It was very difficult. I mean, I was very, very much alone with the memories. I remember very happy times, and those disappeared forever. Anyhow, I wasn't there all the time.
Oh, so you just left him alone in your house? After his whole experience in Europe, he then went to the University of Hungary to study electrical engineering, then came to Purdue, knowing one person in America, went to Purdue to finish his undergraduate degree. From there he went to MIT to get a master's, and then after that went back to school to get a PhD. So if you were to ask someone what they've done and they were to tell you all of that, and then they say, oh, by the way, at 8 years old, my parents were also killed in the Holocaust when I was on my own for 10 years or something like that, you're amazed.
So we started in the fall and it was supposed to end in the spring, but I believe it was around March. I was actually back in Texas when I got a call from his son, and I actually had never met his son. I'd heard plenty about him and seen pictures. I got a phone call from his son, and it was pretty jarring. Apparently, Dr. Goldsmith had an accident. He was walking, he hit his head, and things kind of moved pretty quickly, and he actually passed away. And this was his son calling to see if I could come for the funeral. And actually, this was my first real kind of exposure to death. Thankfully, both sets of my grandparents are alive, and I guess I've been fortunate in that aspect. So this was the first time I've had someone that I was getting to know pass away. Yeah, so I quickly booked a flight back to Miami, and I was thankful that I was at least able to be there for the funeral and get to meet his family, get to share my experiences with them and hear more about his life from them. But yeah, it kind of ended abruptly. We had a lot of things planned as far as conversations and a project and so on and so forth that I was excited to get to do with him, but obviously that didn't happen.
Many of these survivors are quite elderly, remarkably still live on their own, and are alone most of the time. And these young people would come in and the world would shine for them a little bit.
I'd taken the Holocaust history class before I took this class. I wrote a paper about how do people, relatively normal people become these killers. Read all the evidence and things like that, but it just made me angry that anyone could ever do that to another person. Disbelief that that could really happen.
Where do you live?
I live in Colorado.
In Colorado.
Yeah. So I moved back there in January. So I moved out there in January.
You look so good, Canada.
really wanted to engage me and wanted me to understand and get every single little detail of her story down. And then after hearing her story and how traumatic it was, we talked about our lives, and she was really interested in what was going on with me, you know, currently, and where I came from, where my family came from, like my family history. My grandmother's an immigrant from Sicily, so she was really interested in her whole story and how she came to the United States. I've been graduated 4 years. Yeah, I've been all around the past few years, all around the world. I just came back to the US.
So you are a special person. You know, you learn so much in life now.
I ended up doing an internship with a small NGO in Borneo, helping them build a sustainable tourism program for this forest that they were looking to protect. From there, I went to Thailand, where I was working for a news agency run by refugees from Burma, producing videos, writing stories. I've had quite a few interesting experiences over the past few years, but in terms of other things that I've done in my life, the personal relationship that I formed with Rachel was definitely one of the most enlightening and interesting, and talked about definitely transformational experiences that I've had. And really meeting you changed the course of my life, I think. So now, you know, I'm working as a journalist now.
Oh,
what I'm doing.
Good luck to you.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. So I don't think that I would have taken that step if I hadn't met you.
Oh, you see.
Because meeting you and getting to know you and your story.
I'm happy that I gave you luck.
Yeah, you did. So it inspired me because it made me want to live with some sort of purpose.
I wish you good luck.
Thank you. I always think about this and how it started with this program and meeting you. So I feel very fortunate to.
Me too.
Have met you.
Me too.
It was transformational for me, but not in the way that I expected. It wasn't like a direct, like, this internship made me, you know, go and become a historian, or made me go and become a, you know, Holocaust history teacher. It wasn't like that, but it definitely set like a spark kind of going in me that I don't think I would have had otherwise. To try and use my life in a meaningful and purposeful way. To almost take like the opportunity that was robbed from Rachel. I want to use that myself to make a broader impact on the world. Even with my career now, that's the major thing for me is, you know, I want to make an impact with whatever I'm doing.
Groundbreaking to me was the way that this class made you grow up.
Children, some who never saw a survivor, some who never even saw a Jew, wanted to know what happened.
I grew up on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, on 94th and Riverside. Went to Hunter College campus schools for nursery school, elementary school, middle school, high school. My mom was a tax lawyer, my dad was in the music business. They divorced when I was 12, and so I lived half with my mom, half with my dad. But it was a interesting childhood. It was a great childhood. Growing up in New York City is unlike growing up anywhere else in the world. You grow up very quickly. You have a lot of independence from an earlier age, whether it's taking the train or going to amazing museums or things like that. Then I moved to Miami when I was 18 to go to college at UM. I've been here since for the last like 7 or 8 years.
Hey Daniel, this is Jasper. Yeah, I was wondering if you had a chance to look at the background and rationale section.
I wanted a school that had a campus, but not necessarily was rural. When I started school, I wanted to be a medical doctor. And the summer after my freshman year, I trained as an EMT in New York City. And a lot of our patients actually were mental health related patients. So when I went back to school in sophomore year, I dropped a chemistry class and picked up intro psych, and that was just really much more fascinating to me, and I really connected with that material versus chemistry, physics. So then I changed my major and transitioned into psychology.
Okay, so follow me and we will, I'll be asking you some questions about your sleep today.
All right.
How have you been doing?
I've been okay, tired, so I guess it's good that I'm here.
Okay, good, good. All right, you can go ahead and have this seat on that side of the table.
Okay.
When I was in 6th grade, we read a book about the Holocaust, and 2 Holocaust survivors came to speak to us. A lot of the gravity of that situation was lost on a 12-year-old. But I remember thinking to myself, when I have children, who is going to come to their elementary school and tell them about the Holocaust? And when I heard about this opportunity to be in the program, that's kind of what came to my mind, this responsibility almost to carry on the story. And if I could learn one person's story, then there will always be a record of it, always be an account. And maybe one day I can share that with my children so that they too can learn.
When I talk to the students and I talk to schools, higher education, higher ages who understand, I beg them, speak up if you see something wrong. Speak up and don't be quiet. When they see the world is going wrong, speak up.
First of all, in general, in the United States, we're seeing a greater tolerance for hate, for open expressions of hatred. We've seen too many things happening in the United States in the past 2-3 years. And again, it's not just the United States, and it's not just Charlottesville. It's not just Charlottesville.
You see them marching there and screaming, the Jews are not going to take our places. They are ready to kill the Jews. If they wouldn't be afraid, they would kill them tomorrow.
I've never seen a sight like this.
These were reminiscent of typical early Goebbels kind of propaganda gatherings. More than that, they chanted blood and soil. That's a Nazi chant. They chanted Jews will not replace us. That echoes Nazi propaganda. And the tiki torches. That was not by chance. That was not by chance. The organizers of this march knew exactly what they were doing. Quite a few emblems for their racist right-wing organizations, which are evocative of swastikas, of Nazi symbols. But from their look, clean cut. They could have been out on the golf course the next day, you know. Charlottesville is part of a bigger thing. It's not Charlottesville itself that frightens me, though it does frighten me. It's the increased acceptance in the United States of a level of hatred, a level of prejudice, open expressions of prejudice that have been facilitated by the political atmosphere in this country. I'm not saying they created it, but what it did is make the verboten, the forbidden, acceptable.
11 people are dead, 6 more are wounded, including 2 right now in critical condition after a mass murder at a synagogue in Pittsburgh. This is likely the deadliest attack on the Jewish community in the history of the United States.
It made me think about my survivor, Edith, when the Nazis came for her in Poland, it was on Yom Kippur. And they had just left the synagogue and they were going home and they never got to break the fast. The Nazis took them from their home before they could. And I was reminded of that when I was thinking about the shooting inside of a synagogue.
A heinous act of violence in a far-off synagogue nonetheless brings me, a Christian, here to this place of remembrance of 6 million sadly similar acts of violence. From the context of anti-Semitism, we're talking ancient, faith-based rivalries and hostilities worldwide that are sadly being resurrected in ways that are so horrible in our time.
When we, as a society, aren't appropriately outraged by outrageous things, we create more and more space incrementally for those things to happen again. And when we don't make a change following something terrible, what's to stop it from happening again? It's really easy to pull the covers over your head and hide from the world. It's really hard to do the things that are required to prevent something like this from ever happening again, to have the conversations we need to have.
It's crazy to think that people still have this hatred towards other people, and that's why I think this is so important to teach others, because this is how the Holocaust started. With this hatred and with a few ideas that escalated to a few more people that built into groups, and then it turned violent. To know that these things are still happening is terrifying, because I think that people still can be easily manipulated.
You hear about these neo-Nazis and their rhetoric and their ideology. It's more than just hate for your religion or your cultural group or your race or your identity. It's this personal attack.
I've never met someone who denied the existence of the Holocaust, but I can't imagine the kind of blindness that they would have to believe in something like that.
We're talking about how they were afraid people were going to forget, or how they were afraid that the Holocaust deniers were going to eventually win and no one would think that this actually happened.
You can read anything you want in a textbook, but you can't really get an idea of the atrocities and the crimes that are committed without talking to these people. And the less you know and the more that people forget, the more you're going to see people trying to deny that they had any involvement or that what they did was wrong or that it ever happened.
Yes, I deny the Holocaust. If you did any honest investigation of the Holocaust, you'd realize that it is nothing but an international extortion racket by the Jews to bleed, blackmail, extort, and terrorize their enemies.
You know, we've lived with anti-Semitism for 2,000 years, and we'll probably continue to have to live with it.
This is 70 more years over, and we were hoping for a better world. And by all this teaching that we try to do by example and showing, a lot of it is sort of, I wonder what will come.
Before I started the internship, I thought, how do people not know that this happened? You know, and how can you deny that that happened? But I could see that was such a present fear with her especially, and that really kind of stuck with me and really, made me think a lot, especially with what's going on now.
You're held accountable if you're seeing grave injustices happening in front of you. you have a responsibility to speak up.
My trial, which the movie Denial was based on, being sued by the world's then leading Holocaust denier, anti-Semite, whatever. It wasn't only me that was on the line. I felt history was on the line, and the history of the Jewish people and the history of the survivors was on the line, but history itself in general. And I knew if I didn't do it, someone else would have to fight it. Someone else would wage this battle. Who knows if not for that reason, I got the education I got. I had the chance to teach. I decided to write about Holocaust denial. Who knows? But I got that chance. And I would say the same thing about the students in this program.
No, I mean before their session or after.
Holocaust deniers, they're not at all concerned with facts. I think the world is getting more dangerous, but I don't think that hate can overtake us. And Edith is a huge part of why I think that.
It's sad to see that in Europe there's a lot of anti-Semitism and a lot of resurgency, that even countries like Hungary and Poland and Germany, there are certain parties that are gaining momentum. So that's very sad and very scary to me.
The intent to destroy all the Jewish people in Europe is a thought that is horrifying. But it was turned into reality. It was turned into action. I hope that by sharing these stories, they will understand that one should fight against this, whatever way you can.
I remember, seeing some of the neo-Nazi rallies and things like that were happening, reading about them on the news, and my first thought was, they were right. This is coming back now, and it almost seems like, I don't know if it's a real possibility that people forget about it, but with the survivors, unfortunately, dying now, and the way the world is now, it's really troubling and kind of worrying to me that that's going on. On a large scale, it took a whole war and many years for this to be stopped, and the fact that it's still going on in some places throughout the world, it can be really disheartening.
When you look at Jewish history, the biggest single catastrophes were the destruction of the First Temple, the destruction of the Second Temple, and the Holocaust. And it's been a long time before the Holocaust recedes into a more distant memory. Yes, it is the end of a generation, but it is not the end of an era.
One of the beauties of this Holocaust Survivors support internship was the fact that we were college students. I was 20 when the program finished, and we all knew that we had different majors, that we had different interests. We were going to grow up and move, get married, have children, have different professions. This internship was an investment in who we were as young adults, knowing that the relationships that we forged and the stories that we heard were going to necessarily impact us as people forever.
Just hearing about your granddaughter.
I would hope that being part of this program made a difference in their lives. Whether it's how they treat people in their community, whether how they get involved on a national level, on a local level, just that it made a difference.
I had great faith in young people and their ability actually to connect with anyone other than their parents.
I think 13,000.
These young people made a real connection. It wasn't easy. It took some coaxing, but it changed the lives of both.
The first time it was 5 years ago.
When we see the white supremacy marching in the United States of America, This is the sixth country where I live, and this is the country where I felt I am equal to all other citizens.
I went to Cheder, and we had about 20 Jewish boys, my friends. I'm the only survivor. I'm the only survivor of those 25 children.
It's important to tell them and to reassure them and promise them that long after they're gone, their stories won't be forgotten.
We open our lives to them. I mean, we were through hell, you know. Sometimes when I talk about this, it's like I'm not talking about myself. And yet, once we overcome all that, we manage to have a life.
Whenever anybody tells them that this is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, the facts, question it, question everything. And the second thing is that treat others the way you want to be treated. And if these messages get through, then it should be a better world.
Someone said to me the other day, you're the last generation that's going to hear these stories firsthand. You know, and that really hit me.
My sister's son.
Yeah. There won't be any more living evidence that this happened, and that's a little scary and definitely sad. Yeah, so I tried to get that and didn't get that. I mean,
they were looking for answers and wanting and looking for hope. And ironically, through their Holocaust survivors, they learned that the world can be better.
I know that I am achieving something, that the people should know what we suffered.
I feel from my time with Edith that I have a personal connection to the Holocaust.
500 young people were touched by the project forever.
I think we will have failed if there is an end to a Holocaust era. I think that is what we are fighting so hard against.
We have history books, we have images, we have the places themselves where these things occurred. It's on the rest of us to continue to tell the stories and keep the memories alive.
If we have the responsibility only for those people who have had those first-hand encounters, we say that it's okay for other people to forget, or for other people to not explore this historical truth, or for other people to not share it. And I don't believe in that. The people themselves, there will be an end to hearing those stories from their lips. But just because the people who tell the stories firsthand will not live forever, that doesn't mean that the stories can't.
This program was made possible by Elizabeth G. Frank and family. In memory of Stephen Frank, beloved father, husband, and brother. Additional major funding was generously provided by the Gelvin Family Philanthropic Fund. Kent Services. The Five Millers Family Foundation. The Bremen Family Foundation. Marita and George Feldenkrais. Leslie Miller Science. This film has been supported by a grant from the Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany. A full list of funders can be found at aptonline.org.
So it's my honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Mindy Hersh. Dr. Mindy Hersh was the senior executive producer of My Survivor, which we just watched. Dr. Hersh is a licensed mental health counselor in Miami, Florida, with over 40 years of experience working with individuals, couples, groups, and organizations. In addition to her practice as a psychotherapist, her expertise as an educator, trainer, coach, and organizational consultant has led to numerous professional and volunteer leadership roles throughout her career. Dr. Hersh is a daughter of Holocaust survivors, and she served for 6 years as the director of academic enrichment of the University of Miami's Holocaust Survivors Support Internship Program. Dr. Hersh holds a PhD in counselor education from the University of Florida. She also has her EDS and MED degrees in counselor education, which are also from the University of Florida, and she earned her BA in psychology and sociology from the State University, New York at Buffalo. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Mindy. This is a really, really great film. I think it's really powerful, and I think it's important and relevant to today and everything going on. I am so jealous of this internship opportunity. I would have loved to have something like this as an undergraduate student, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. So my first question for you before we open it up to discussion is, how did you become involved with this internship program, and is the course still being offered today?
Sure. First of all, Nikki, thank you. Thank you for including the film in this really important educational week. Thank you to the memorial. Thank you to Sharon Horowitz. We are always thrilled to have the film shown and to be part of a program such as this is very meaningful to us. The internship program, well, as you heard in the film, it started in 2004. And in 2010, I was recruited. So the program had been around already for a couple of years. And I was recruited to take on the role of the director of academic enrichment. Always used to say I had the best gig on the University of Miami campus. It was really an extraordinary professional experience. The program ended in 2016, though. When the program ended, we had an extensive wait list. The students, we had to cap it every semester at 50 students. I mean, it was a wildly successful experience for the kids, for the students, but we had to stop because the number of survivors who had the capacity to participate in the program just dwindled to the point where it was time to end.
Right. And how did you and the other producers come to create this documentary?
Well, as you heard, the number 500, which is probably a little bit of an underestimate of how many students went through the program over the course of the 11 years. And I had the privilege of working with over 50% of them, so that I knew firsthand the impact that this had on the students. And you saw just 7 of these amazing undergraduates. And so when the program ended, I believed that we had to create a vehicle through which we could capture and continue to tell the students' stories. And so fortunately, it was an idea that had legs immediately, and I was blessed to recruit 3 exceptional women in the community: Dr. Helen Chassett, Bonnie Ryder-Lehrer, and Maxine Schwartz, who became co-producers, and then Jerry Levine, who is a local talented filmmaker. And we just put it together and had a great groundswell of grassroots support from the community. We were funded through only, with the exception of a grant from the Claims Conference, private donations, and we had a film.
That's fabulous. What would you say is your goal, or one of the many goals of this documentary?
Well, again, as our survivors are leaving us, and people who can speak with authority of their firsthand experiences, and so the entire Jewish world, including our own Holocaust Memorial, are very concerned with how to continue to tell the story and keep the history alive. And so this film was conceived of as really just one small contribution to that enormous worldwide effort, with a particular lens, as you saw, being young people, being able to talk about what they learned firsthand through the intimate relationships they established, and then speaking to young people. I know we were hoping to have students on this on this program, and so speaking to exactly them about what it means to have had a relationship with a survivor and what they learned about the Holocaust.
I noticed something very interesting in the documentary. Dr. Deborah Lifstadt, she had a quote that she said, we think if we can educate someone, we would turn them into a decent human being. And that really stuck with me. Like her, and like a lot of us, I feel like we have really dedicated our lives to educating and teaching about this subject. And so I guess with that in mind, I want to ask you, what do you think is the most important thing that teachers and students should take away from this documentary?
Right. So I think that I'm going to answer the question through the lens of this moment. It was always true that our goal was to continue to bring awareness to what's happening in the world in terms of the rise of anti-Semitism, racism, all of that which is happening. It is particularly true for me, and just watching the film again, I haven't seen the film for a few months. What's happening in the world right now with the rise of anti-Semitism is frankly terrifying. And so what I hope everyone takes away from the film is that it is incumbent upon them, each viewer, each one of us, to speak up. And Victor Farkas says that very powerfully in the film. If you see something, speak up and don't be frightened. And it is incumbent upon us to speak up, to take action, to work to ensure that the lessons of the Holocaust live on, and that they animate our efforts today, because we know that the worst that can happen. We also know that upstanders can make the difference, and that we're all working to heal what is increasingly feeling like a broken world.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you. I would like to open it up to any questions that the audience might have. I know we had a school group here. Pause for a second if anyone would like to share anything in the chat, or if anyone would like to unmute themselves. Well, we are recording this program, so we are going to share this on our YouTube channel, and we are going to email it out to all of the teachers and students who we have coming to the memorial. Thank you so much again, Dr. Hersh, for being part of this program. It means so much to us. And for everyone who's watching now or later in the future, we have more great programs coming up later this week. So please stay tuned, and we hope to see you at the other programs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nikki. Take care.